So today's agenda, we'll go through a couple of different pieces, and we've got some fun activities as well. So we're going to focus on goal setting and defining success. How does that help in developing a clear direction, focus, and accountability for any kind of change initiative that we have, defining what that success is and being able to create that roadmap for your project team, and increasing really the likelihood of achieving those desired outcomes. We're going to walk through an exercise of how we can work together to develop some KPIs, so key performance indicators, looking at how that will measure our success and what does that mean. And so we'll have an exercise that we can walk through actually developing some of those KPIs. And then we'll talk a little bit about what happens next. Once we have that KPI set, do we need to adjust? Do we need to update our measurements? And what does it mean to do some of that reevaluation? So first, we'll go ahead and start with our defining of the goals. The importance of defining goals really is they provide that clear direction, ensuring that all your efforts and resources are aligned so that we can go forward towards our outcome. This helps you kind of avoid distractions as well as stay on course. Well-defined goals can help motivate employees as well, giving them a sense of purpose, something to strive for. Research actually shows that goal setting makes employees more inspired and committed to that organization and that goal as well. Goals also serve as those benchmarks to measure and evaluate the performance of business. So they help identify areas for improvement, making informed decisions about resource allocation and strategic alignments and investments. Being able to set those goals, businesses can prioritize activities, allocate resources, save time, money, and effort to make sure that we're investing in the right areas. And then constantly be going back with our continuous improvement. How do we update? How do we keep moving forward? As we all know, business changes so frequently, not only from external sources, but internal sources as well. Priorities change, economics change. How do we keep our business moving forward, and how do we keep measuring those successes? So how do we put together that North Star or that vision statement that we have? It's really like putting together that map. If I have a destination in mind, how am I going to get there? What are the steps that I need to do along the way? How do I make sure that I know that direction? You always want to have that map and that vision so that you can come back to it. Our goal is this, or our North Star is XYZ. I have one customer that their vision was to create a future where data and automation provide efficient, proactive support, enhancing trust and collaboration within a connected ecosystem. And so that was their driving force as they went through, and that was their map. So everything comes back to that statement. It gives that purpose and direction so that when we look at how we're going to create our KPIs, we can start to see, wait, how does it relate back to that North Star or that vision statement? Helps with that clear communication. Everybody's on that same page as well. Developing KPIs that make sense. How do we track those KPIs that help you stay on track and identify those areas for improvement? How do we adjust where we need to and then communicate that progress as we go through? KPIs that make sense. It's one of the fun things that we'll do in our exercise is really look at, once we set that goal, how do we make sure that we're tracking information that truly means that we're on track for that goal? We have some examples that we'll go through about, maybe it's a sales enablement. And how do we know if people are using the system? Do we just want to track logins into the system? Is that truly a key performance indicator of user adoption? Or are there more features and functions and things that they're going to be doing that really show me that they're adopting the system? And so we can look at what do those really relevant KPIs mean for your business. And when we develop a KPI, we want to make sure that it's SMART. It's a great acronym here, that they are specific, they are measurable, that they are achievable, they are relevant, and they are time bound. And all of those are very important. We want to be as specific as we can so that we know when we achieve it, we are really moving towards success. And then we want them to be measurable. Like, how can I measure this specific goal? We'll talk a little bit about objective and subjective KPIs as well. How do we measure that, and how can we make sure that we have the data that is attached to that metric? And making sure that it's achievable. What is realistic? How do we look at our benchmarks? How do we use those benchmarks in deciding where we want to go in the future and what's realistic for our organization? And that they are relevant, and that overall strategy to our larger objectives, that there's alignment. And then time bound. And I don't mean that after you do your change that the next week everything's hunky-dory, right? Like, that time needs to be appropriate for the goal. If it is a user adoption, it might be 6 months to a year before we start to see things. We know that after change is implemented, there's always a dip. And so we want to account for that and put in some realistic time and deadlines for us to measure. And then we look at identifying those right metrics, making sure that I have data that backs up those metrics so that I can start to understand what do I want to measure, and making sure I have a clear definition of that success. One of the other things that I get constant questions on is baselines. Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you actually have baselines at your company of where you want to go for your KPIs. See if anybody gets that thumbs up, thumbs down. Thumbs up. Oh, good. I got a thumbs up. A lot of times people don't have baseline KPIs. So what does that mean? Does that mean you just can't measure? No, what that means is we're going to get creative on how we can start to measure. We're going to look at industry averages. So things like call time handling in customer service. If I don't know what our call time handling is, in the past, I can look at what it is today and where do I want to go? Or I can start to look at what are the industry averages. So there's many ways that we can start to gather those baselines and look at how we can use that information that we have to create that realistic forecast. All right. Emily, are we ready? This is the interactive portion here now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so let's actually take those concepts that you talked about and work through them together. So we're going to actually build KPIs in real time with you all. So take out a piece of paper, pull up a OneNote, pull up a sticky note, so that you can start jotting down some answers and some notes. Okay. So since a lot of folks are working through these questions, probably for the first time, we're also going to go through an example to help spark some ideas. So this is a vision statement that was crafted for a CRM implementation initiative. So this is going to be kind of our group example that we're going to use. So it states, our CRM system is an investment in our people and company so team members can better focus on our clients' success. It gives us reliable information, automated processes for routine work, and better tools for cross-team collaboration so we can focus on high-value client activities. So we're going to keep coming back to this vision statement to help us build out our KPIs together. Okay. So first, let's begin by identifying our overall goal for our technology initiative. We can't just start with KPIs, just like we talked about. So we have to have a clear understanding of what we're trying to achieve and where we're trying to end up in our journey. So I want you all to think about, what is the primary business outcome you want to get from this initiative? So some examples can be increasing user engagement, or streamlining internal processes, improving data accuracy, or they can be as obscure as modernizing your data platform. Now, one thing to think about here is that a goal can be very obscure or it can be somewhat specific. But something important to remember is that something like increasing user engagement could actually roll up into your overall goal of modernizing your data platform. So with that information, I will give you a couple seconds just to write down your business outcome that you would want to get from your initiative. Okay. Hopefully that was enough time to give you a little bit of an idea. But if you're not really sure where to start, let's work through our group example. So I want you to choose the goal that does not fit the vision statement that we first talked about. So again, choose the goal that does not fit the vision statement. Improving data quality, increasing employee efficiency, decreasing expenses, or improving collaboration. And I'm actually going to let you choose. So go ahead and vote now. Maybe we have some responses coming in. There we go. And just like we discussed before, this might be a little tricky. So it's okay. We're all learning together today. Okay, let's see some responses that are coming in. Awesome. Yeah. Decreasing expenses. That is absolutely correct. So while decreasing expenses is something that we would all like to get out of our projects, it is not the main goal of the vision. It may be a byproduct of the vision, but it is not the main goal. So nice job, everyone. Appreciate your engagement. Okay. And Erin, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So how do we look at, or how do we determine what success looks like? So if this project or this change initiative is wildly successful and changes or the business outcomes, what are those that we would see? And so some examples of what we've seen in the past are reduction in operating costs, customer service response time improvements, increasing employee productivity, and improvement in customer satisfaction. So if you can write down just a couple of those success outcomes that you guys may be thinking of for a project that you're working on or a change initiative that you're working on, we'll give you a couple seconds. And then like we did before, we'll come back to our group vision statement and our new goal, and then look at what really does that success of that goal look like and be a little bit more prescriptive. All right, I will skip us ahead here. So here again, we've got our vision statement that we come back to. And then we chose a goal here to improve data quality and consistency of data entered into the system. So taking that vision statement and going one level below, specifically talking about that reliability of information. So we want to improve that data quality and the consistency of data being entered into the system. So we look at what of these three would best be a success metric of that goal. So increasing marketing contacts, less bounce back from marketing sales emails, or the last updated date is current. So we'll go ahead and take a look at those with the vision statement and the goal. And we'll go ahead and let you vote. right, we're getting some votes in. I think there's a little bit of a delay on that, so I think I'll go faster to that as I talk through. Okay, we'll wait for just a couple more to come through. All right. All right, excellent. We've got some diversity. So less bounce backs from email, from marketing and sales emails. I think that one is a very good metric on this because one, it's more specific than an increase in marketing contacts. Increase in marketing contacts just means that we may have a name and it could be an email address, but it could just be a name. When we get a little bit more specific about what truly does success look like from that goal, that is really where we're at. The last updated date is current. That could be another metric that we look at, depending on if we have new contacts in the system, old contacts in the system that we want to get up to date. But really, when we look at how I can see improving that data quality from a marketing standpoint, it's making sure that we are successful on connecting with those customers. Excellent. All right, Emily.
Cool. Yeah, so now that we know what we want success to look like, it's time to focus on the metrics that will tell us whether we are on track to meet that goal or not. So next, I want you to think about what data points will indicate progress. So a very common metric that is used, I'm sure in all of your businesses, is improving customer satisfaction. So if we wanted to measure that, we would usually measure NPS score and track survey responses. So just an example, but I'll give you a few seconds. I want you to write down 2 to 3 specific metrics that will show progress towards your goal. Okay. Now let's go back to our group example here. So we have our vision statement, we establish our goal, and we know what we want success to look like. Now, for the sake of this example, let's say that we did choose to go with increasing marketing contacts. Totally fair. So now, with that specific success metric, I want you to choose the best metric that matters for increasing marketing contacts. And this one I feel like might be a little tricky too. So give you a second to review the vision statement, goal, and success.
And some of these, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just really about what that end goal is. And it's an exercise to try to get to think about, like, what does it really mean as we go through. If you want to pop to the next one, I'll talk a little bit about, like, birthdays entered, right? Depending on what you're doing, that might be an appropriate one, right? If I'm sending out birthday information or saying a happy birthday, if that's part of what my business does, that might be an appropriate one. Or, that contacts, how many contacts have we increased after we've gone live on a new system? Or what's that list view and having job titles and unique criteria? So all of them could be used specifically, but sometimes it's depending on that specific vision statement, coming back to that, to which is the most appropriate for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, what are you going to do with that birthday field? I guess if it's your goal to give more of a personal touch to your customers, then that might be a totally fair metric to measure. Okay, we have some responses coming in.
Although I always want to know if people are going to enter the year of my birthday, because I don't like to give that out.
The year doesn't matter, right?
The month and date, that's it.
Yeah. Cool. So we have some responses coming in. Let's look at what we have here. Okay. Yeah. List view of contacts with appropriate job title or unique criteria. Absolutely. So not only is this metric very specific, we actually have a couple metrics in this. We have a list view, which gives us something to actually view and use as a user. We have the increased contact, and then we have the job title field, which allows us to report even further on that increasing contact. So nice job, everyone.
Excellent. So now we start to look at, now that we have that KPI, what do we want to improve by? How much? What is that metric going to be? So we need to be able to make sure that it's time bound. How quickly do we want to be able to make that improvement? And then what is that improvement going to be? Is it a percentage? Is it a number? How do we set some of that without just kind of, finger in the air? There's some industry averages that you can start to take a look at for customer satisfaction, or a lot of times in call centers, there's published industry averages. When we look at sales metrics, close rates, those types of things that we want to be able to improve or increase, and that might be dollars instead of percentages. So we can start to look at what is that specific metric or KPI that we want to improve, and then how much do we want to improve that and by when. So there were some examples here of increasing customer satisfaction, which is an example of a subjective goal or KPI, as opposed to reduce system downtime, which is more of an objective. So subjective KPIs, which are perfectly valid, but they are more dependent on sentiment, either of end users or sentiment of customers. And so those are, when you do those measurements, you have to kind of adjust for that sentiment as well. All right, we'll go ahead and come back to that vision statement and our goal to improve data quality and consistency of data entered. We want to increase our marketing contacts, and our metric is that list view of contacts with the appropriate job title or unique criteria. So when we start to look at that, how much do we want to increase that number? And so this is some numbers that we've picked based on our past experience of implementing in specific Dynamics CRM systems. So we can look at marketing contacts. We're just getting in more marketing contacts in general. We're increasing those contacts with job titles by 10%. Maybe we're increasing a conversion rate of lead to account, or lead to an opportunity, or we're increasing our web traffic by 8%. So let's go ahead and vote on those. And so again, those percentages can be based on industry averages, can be based on some goals that your organization has already defined and decided that they want to go ahead and increase that. Those goals could also be dollars, could be time periods and timeframes as well. Can I start to see some things coming in? This is our last vote, so get your votes in.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and take a look. Conversion rate is a good one. Also increasing how many contacts, if we're looking at getting in those contacts that are quality data. So looking at those are the top two for these KPIs and metrics. Now, I think the last thing, Emily, you want to talk a little bit about what do we do after that?
Yeah. So really important note about KPIs is that they are not set in stone. So as your project or initiative progresses, you may need to adjust your KPIs based on new data, changes in scope, whatever change may come along. So you should plan to regularly track your KPIs and make adjustments to not only work toward your goal, but accelerate your time to value.
Excellent.
Yeah. So then just to wrap up our group example, thank you everyone also for your engagement in that. We may want to start off measuring a KPI maybe every week. And I think, Erin, you mentioned this before, it's important to note that your tracking schedule may depend on like where you're at in your project. So you may not want to measure the first day after you go live, or even the first week after you go live, because your users may have other priorities that they need to focus on. So your numbers of contacts or job titles, they may be lower, and then you may it may skew your perspective of where you are, and you may adjust when you don't need to. So just take that into consideration, that tracking often is a good idea, but just consider when you're tracking. So yeah, we've identified our goal here, but documentation and sharing these KPIs and goals with your stakeholders really makes them come to life. So they are not static. You are constantly reiterating on them and getting the input from your stakeholders, which I will note here on the scorecard that we have for you, that you will receive after this call. The business owner of the KPI is very important. And that's a whole other conversation that we need to have. So, which we don't have time for right now, unfortunately. But so just on that note, if you find that your KPIs are not, and your metrics are not going towards your goal, it is okay to adjust. It is just very important to make sure that your team has a plan and the ability to pivot if you need to. So just to wrap us up here, thank you so much for joining our webinar. We had a great time putting it on. We hope you got some value out of it. If we could send you home with anything, or these three things: set clear goals. Without them, there will be no clear path to success. Align KPIs to your goals. Just don't define success. Make sure you actually measure it. And give success a direction and path by tracking KPIs and adjusting if needed.